When I first became a full-time nomad, I had some friends who were highly concerned about me in this life decision. They worried about my safety on the road.
You're in terrible danger.
I'm happy to report that after over a year on the road full-time, I have escaped relatively unscathed.
Relatively.
I've had some great adventures and some mishaps, but I'm fine. But I know that my friends are not the only people concerned, and there are real dangers out there. So in today's video, I'd like to talk about the most dangerous places to camp. And some of these might actually surprise you. They're not the first things most people think of. Now, before we talk about these, I'd like to also note that it's possible to camp safely in all of these places. But statistically speaking,
Nerd!
these are the most dangerous. Anyway, these are in no particular order. So let's dive in. The first dangerous place is a little surprising. Picture this, you're out in the beautiful wilderness. There's no one around you. You're far from the hustle and bustle. You're communing with nature. There aren't a bunch of people around. There aren't the big city lights and the honking horns and all the pollution and all that nonsense and gridlock you get in the city. You're safe, right? Life is good. Life is so good. And you might not realize that you're in danger. That's because the most dangerous places to camp can be the ones that are the most isolated. Not because there's anything particularly dangerous about them, but because you're far from civilization if something is going to happen. You know, there isn't a hospital right there. There aren't quick ways to take care of something. You know, you might not even have cell phone access. Justin and I, we actually have a personal locator beacon that we got for when we're really far from civilization, especially when we're out hiking in some of the remote areas where we don't have cell, where we wouldn't be able to call for help. And I'll link that in the description below. But you know, there are lots of places in between that aren't way out in the middle of nowhere, like where we were at Big Bend. Maybe you're half an hour or an hour from an emergency room, and that doesn't seem that bad until somebody's having a heart attack. So yeah, it can be very dangerous, even if it's beautiful. Although it totally can be worth the risk, but it is technically pretty dangerous. The second dangerous place to camp is anywhere low-lying that's in a flood region. Now, with RV parks and established campgrounds, they tend to design the park so that there's good drainage, hopefully anyway, depends on who designed the park. But they tend to try to make it so that drainage will flow in a reasonable manner, but there are always those big storms that kind of defy the engineering of the park. And not only that, if you're somebody who boondocks, maybe you do a lot of BLM land, or you do state parks that need a little TLC that haven't been looked at for a while, you could find that suddenly you are in a situation where you're going to get flooded out. And that can be extremely dangerous. That can happen to you very quickly. That can be very scary, and that can sneak up on you fast. The third one is any area that has grizzly bears. Famously, Yellowstone, some places in Alaska have a big grizzly bear population. And, it's not every grizzly that's going to mess with you, but it's a significant risk, especially if you don't secure food, take grizzly measures. If you are out hiking by yourself without bear spray, anytime you're in grizzly territory, you've got to take extra precautions. And I'll link some resources below about that, but grizzly territory is especially dangerous, and if you're not paying attention, it can kind of sneak up on you. I know one of the big keys that I see often are the bear-proof trash cans. Their presence isn't always an indicator that there are grizzlies nearby. Looking at you, Fort Wilderness, they have tons of bear-proof trash cans and they're not a grizzly area. But typically, if you're in an area with a grizzly problem, they will have the bear-proof trash cans. So it's kind of a indicator to check and see. But again, I'll link some resources below. The fourth dangerous area is one that we've had a lot of experience with, and that's any area that has extreme weather like hurricanes or tornadoes. Tornadoes especially, RVs do not do good with the wind, and the severe thunderstorms that accompany tornadoes can produce hail that can damage your RV roof. So even if you're not in extreme danger, it can be very damaging and expensive to park in uncovered areas that are prone to thunderstorms and things like that. So definitely something you need to pay attention to. If you aren't good at weather, you really should learn as a camper, as an RVer. You should get better at it and learn about it and avoid those areas if you can. It's tough though, with weather getting more extreme every year. If there's a hurricane coming your way, get the heck out of there. And if you're in Tornado Alley, you need to know where your storm shelters are, and you need to find good places to go that aren't your RV, because you do not want to be in an RV during those kind of winds. They flip. it's scary and, lives can be lost. Honestly, one of the most dangerous places all by itself. The next place that's really dangerous to camp is anywhere with a history of landslides and avalanches. And I've actually seen in my travels some fairly nice RV parks that are new, that are up on hillsides and mountainsides. People are developing in rock slide areas. And I'm like, I don't know. Like Justin and I have talked about it a little bit. We're like, well, the view is pretty up there, but I'm a little freaked out. It looks kind of dangerous. If the site slides off, your RV's coming with it, and if you're inside, that's horrible.
It's a disaster.
Definitely something to consider, looking at where you are. If you're in BLM or undeveloped land and you're picking a campsite, it might be easy to pick something with a good view on a cliff and not think about that. So definitely something to consider, potentially very dangerous. And the sixth dangerous area is the one that my friends warned me about and what people think about first, and that's camping in urban areas. And I'll tell you, it can be sketchy. It can be dangerous depending on where you are, what sorts of neighborhoods. I will say that it's very easy to find campgrounds that are somewhat near urban centers and sometimes actually right in the city that are reasonable and safe, that have good security. We tend to stay at them. So if you've never looked at a crime map, get good at it. You can go and you can look at crime maps and see what the hot zones are. They typically trend anywhere from green being a really safe area all the way up to red being one of the really dangerous areas. And then in between you have like yellow and orange. That said, we have successfully stayed in an orange zone in one of the most dangerous cities in the US. I actually did a video on that and reviewed the campground. It was perfectly safe. I'll link that as well. But there are all kinds of reasonable options. Stealth camping or camping on the street or in a parking lot in those areas, I would say would be a lot dicier. Not that people haven't done it, I know they have, and some people have good success with it, but you're much more likely to have issues, with people bothering you or trying to mess with your stuff, or even the police trying to drive you off. So it has its downsides. But yeah, it's what people think of first, but it's actually not the biggest danger. The next one is RVing in coastal areas, and I specifically am thinking about beaches. There's actually a lovely stretch of beach all along the Texas coast where you can park your RV. There's a fantastic video done by Robin of Creativity RV that I will link in the description below, where she goes and she almost gets stuck though because the tide comes in. So that is absolutely something to consider. Robin is a smart woman, a savvy woman.
She's smart.
And she got taken unawares by this, so that tells you the danger is real. But yeah, you have to be really careful about that kind of thing, and that's not even counting things like tsunamis. Happily Ever Hanks, another RV channel, the Hanks, they have a video where they were in Alaska and they had a tsunami warning. I want to say they weren't near it. They were really concerned about it and they called the campground, everything was fine. It was actually less peril than Robin's situation, but I'll link that as well if you want to see that. There are actual dangers and it's good to keep aware of them. The ninth one is campgrounds that are near industrial or hazardous areas. And this is really interesting because these kind of incidents, the major disasters you see with plants losing track of toxic gas or blowing up, it's very rare, but it does happen. And if you happen to be camping near one, you're gonna have a really bad time. So that's something else to keep in mind. That said, while it's a dangerous situation, you're very unlikely to have it happen to you, but it is something to bear in mind. There have been trail derailments, truck crashes, where they've had chlorine gas and all kinds of problems, and the whole community has had issues. And if you happen to be in an RV, you're not going to be any different than anybody else that lives in that community. So something to keep in mind. And unfortunately, these industrial accidents are happening more and more. And finally, a very dangerous situation, easily overlooked because it can, once again, be one of those beautiful, idyllic situations that you really look for when you're camping, is camping in desert situations without shade, in the extreme heat, with limited access to water. And this can actually be coupled with the very first thing we discussed, which was remote and isolation. And that's what we discovered in Big Bend. We were at an RV park actually, but we were so far out that the resort, the RV park, lost power, and so did the entire town and the town next to it. And it was 100 degrees and there was no shade. So that was a really spicy thing for us. Luckily, we did have our solar panel and a battery bank that we used, and we had plenty of fresh water in the rig. But boy, it can get dangerous really fast, even if you're in an RV park, let alone if you're off boondocking on BLM land in the desert and it's hot. Again, None of these are a death sentence. None of these things are guaranteed to be dangerous. But statistically, if you're looking at the most dangerous places to camp, it's these categories. Anyway, the bottom line here is to always research your RV destination, your campground, the area the best you can, and to build these survival skills as you go along. And I would say it's kind of good to inch out. Don't start with the most dangerous stuff. Start with the easy camping and kind of work your way up. That's what we did. We built our skills as we went along, and we have done great. And I think as we're moving into our second full-time year on the road, that we're going to be pushing ourselves more and more to do more adventurous things.
Danger zone?
Which I'm very excited about. Again, we have the locator beacon, the battery bank, the solar panel, and a lot of good knowledge we've built up. So fingers crossed, should be interesting. And if it's a mess, it'll be a good show for you all. So there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Keep on moving, and I'll see you in the next one.